Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Next Gen Ed 777. So, basically, what I got for you today is these moon phases and these moon phase calendars that we're going to go through. And pretty much this is going to be the shortened version of the moon phase part 1 astrology portion. I just kind of shortened this into just the moon phases and the moon calendar so that we can know which moon phases and new moons and full moons are going to happen soon. And yeah, just go over it all. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you. Anyways, so here's the blue moon, like I promised you. It's very blue, isn't it? You know, it's a super blue moon, obviously, so it's a little extra blue, and yeah. No, it's not at all. So this is the actual picture. So, yeah. Hopefully that got you, or hopefully it did it actually. But if it did, just leave a comment maybe or not. It's funny. I want to see if I got anyone. But yeah, blue moon does not mean it's blue actually. So it's just a regular kind of moon. So in astrology, the moon is associated with emotions, intuition, and the feminine energy. The different phases of the moon are believed to have different effects on our emotions and behavior. The zodiac sign associated with the moon is Cancer. And then, just like all the other ones that are associated with a planet, this one's associated with the moon. As a whole, the moon has been a symbol of femininity, intuition, and the subconscious. It has also been associated with various deities and goddesses throughout history. The phases of the moon are caused by the moon's orbit around the Earth, along with the Earth's orbit around the sun. So basically, you've got these two effects going on, and once you add them both together, you're going to get what we see, the moon phases. So basically, that's going to be based off of superposition, which is a mathematical term, and I'm going to go into that in our next video as well. But anyways, the moon takes about 27.3 days to orbit the Earth, while the moon takes about 29.5 days to go through its, phases, full moon, new moon, and everything, just basically a new moon to another, or full moon to another full moon, one complete period. Anyways, lunar phases. In many cultures, certain lunar phases were believed to be lucky or unlucky. For example, it was believed that the waxing moon was a good time to start new projects, while the waning moon was a good time to finish old projects. So now let's go over all the moon phases in depth in particular. So we have our new moon. So this is the phase of the moon when it is completely dark and not visible from Earth. It occurs when the moon is positioned between the Earth and the sun. So usually you see this moon during the day, weirdly enough. So new moon is during the day. Not as eventful. It's not like a nighttime thing in the end, but it's kind of cool. You can see it during the day. Anyways, in astrology, this is a time for new beginnings, fresh starts, setting intentions, and planting seeds for the future. The next phase would be waxing crescent. This is the phase of the moon when it starts to become visible again after the new moon. It appears as a thin crescent in the sky. This is a time for taking actions towards your goals, making plans, and building momentum. And then we have first quarter. This is the phase of the moon when it appears as a half circle in the sky. It occurs when the moon has completed a quarter of its orbit around the Earth. In astrology, this is the time for taking action, making decisions, and moving forward with plans. And now we're on to waxing gibbous. This is the phase of the moon when it is almost fully illuminated, but not quite. So it appears as greater than a semicircle and less than a circle. So it's like just almost a circle, almost full moon. In astrology, this is time for refinement, making adjustments, and fine-tuning your plans. So now we have full moon. So this is the phase of the moon when it is fully illuminated and occurs when the moon is on the opposite side of the Earth from the sun. So full moon's always going to be visible during the night. So it's only going to be visible because it's on the opposite side. Anyway, so in astrology, this is a time for accumulation, manifestation, and the peak of energy. It is a time to release what no longer serves you and to express gratitude for what you have. The full moon has been associated with various myths and folklore throughout history, including werewolves and much more. In many cultures, the full moon was believed to have magical powers and to be a time of heightened emotions and supernatural activity. It is also believed that babies are born more often on full moons, practically inducing labor in pregnant women. I'm a full moon baby, to be honest, so I guess there's some sort of credit to all that. However, scientific studies have not found a correlation between people's birthdays and dates of full moons. Nevertheless, the moon does influence certain animals and their reproductive patterns. Some marine creatures, such as coral and certain species of fish, synchronize their spawning with moon phases. In particular, sea turtles often lay their eggs during specific lunar cycles so that their young will hatch on full moons. The correlation between animals and moon phases is complex and varies across species. So this is going to be in another later episode as well. So stay tuned for that. Now we're on to waning gibbous. This is the phase of the moon when it is starting to become less illuminated. Basically just coming out of a full moon. So it's going to be a full circle and it's going to be shrinking a little bit. So it's going to be almost a full circle. And then in astrology, this is a time for reflection, letting go, and releasing what no longer serves you. Now we're on to third quarter. This is the phase of the moon when it appears as a half circle in the sky and is going to be on the opposite side of the first quarter phase, obviously. So, in astrology, this is a time for releasing, letting go, and surrendering to the flow of life. And then to wrap it up, we have waning crescent. So this is the phase of the moon when it is almost dark again and appears as a thin crescent in the sky. In astrology, this is a time for rest, reflection, and preparing for the next new moon. As you may have noticed, the names started off with waxing, then transitioned to waning. This describes the increase and decrease of the moon's illumination. The term waxing comes from the Old English word wuxan, meaning to grow or to increase. It is used to describe the moon's illumination when it is growing larger from one phase to the next. The term waning comes from the Old English word waning, meaning to decrease or to diminish. I probably said the Old English wrong, but whatever. Anyways, during the waning phases, the moon's illumination gradually decreases as it moves towards the next new moon. The term gibbous originated from the Latin word gibbosus, which means humpbacked or protuberant. Okay, well, anyways. The word describes the appearance of the moon when it is more than half illuminated, but not full, forming a round bulge shape, almost like a humpback, you know? Now, before we move on to the different full moons and new moons, get out of moon phases, I just want to reiterate, just like at the beginning of this video, that the dark side of the moon experiences the exact opposite phases that we see. So yeah, just the exact opposite version is on the other side, obviously. So now from that, we're going to go on to all the different full moons. Blue moons is our first one. So a blue moon is commonly defined as the second full moon occurring within a single calendar month. While rare, they can happen approximately once every 2.7 years. The term blue doesn't refer to the moon's actual color, but rather signifies its rarity. The origin of the term blue moon is somewhat uncertain. It is believed to have evolved from the phrase blue moon in Old English, which meant betrayer moon. This referred to an extra moon that could betray the usual lunar cycle of seasons. So typically, like we said at the very beginning of that, monthly blue moons is the modern day interpretation of blue moon, but back in the day they had seasonal blue moons, which was actually the third full moon if there were 4 that season. But yeah, and then in 2018 we had 2 blue moons. So we had a blue moon in January and blue moon in March. And this was due to the fact that February has 28 days
which makes total sense. The lunar cycle, the moon phase period is going to be 29.5 days. So it makes sense that having February in the middle kind of like evens things out. So you're going to have a second blue moon actually. So funny how that worked out in 2018, but February makes things a little iffy then. But yeah, and our last blue moon was the super blue moon on August 30th.
And then as you can see, we got this fancy lunar calendar. We got this for last year and then also this year. But as you can see, they both are going to have moon eclipses, lunar eclipses, and also solar eclipses on here too. So solar eclipses happen when new moons are present, and then lunar eclipses will happen when it's a full moon. So a lunar eclipse will be a blood moon, give or take. So give or take. But yeah, we'll talk about that in just a second. But yeah, that's the 2023 lunar calendar. And then we have our 2024 lunar calendar here as well. So yeah, if we check out this year's calendar, we're able to see that it doesn't have any monthly blue moons. There's not 2 full moons in 1 month, unfortunately. So, but if we're able to break up the year via solstices and equinoxes, the seasons, in other words, we're able to see that we're going to have a seasonal blue moon on August 19th. So that's going to be the third one of that season, summer. And then weirdly enough, our next monthly blue moon is not going to happen until May 31st, 2026. So 2 years down the road. So yeah, this is going to be the second one of the month then. And now on to blood moons. Blood moons, they're technically lunar eclipses, so we'll go into further detail later in a different video. However, they're also full moons, and I figured might as well give you some dates, while we're at it. But anyway, so blood moons, also known as total lunar eclipses, occur when the Earth aligns between the Sun and the Moon. This will cast a shadow onto the Moon's surface that will be red in the end, at least if it's a total lunar eclipse. During this alignment, the Moon can appear reddish or coppery, which gives its name the blood moon. Now as we look at this diagram, we can see this shadow of a cone right here, right in the middle. Now that's basically the umbra. However, in this diagram, the red is actually refracted off the atmosphere of the Earth, and it's going to be causing some red light, in fact, to be moving towards the shadow. So it's refracted towards it, and that's why we're able to see it as red. The umbra is the shadow, and the shadow actually extends into the red right here. So it's technically an eclipse, total eclipse, when it goes through the umbra. So now if we look at this outside portion, which is the penumbra, that's going to be where it's partially eclipsed by the sun, where it only has some of the sunlight. So that is a penumbra eclipse. However, a partial eclipse is going to have some red to it. So it's going to go through that umbra area and be part of the penumbra and the umbra portion. So it's going to be on the border, hence partial lunar eclipse. So a full lunar eclipse is when it's completely red. So now if we look at this picture here, basically it's a series of photos of a moon as it went through a total lunar eclipse. So you can see there's some prenumbral and partial lunar eclipses in this as well as it enters a total eclipse. And then as we put it over here, we can see that it's almost like it follows the light then as well. Unfortunately, I do have to point out that all these are full moons. So the photo that was taken here, it must have had a cloud in the way or something. So let's fill those in real quick, even though it's probably not as accurate as possible. But basically, it's going to be like that, where it goes from light, red to light. So if we check out last year's lunar calendar, we can see that we had a penumbral eclipse on May 5th, and then we also had a partial eclipse on October 28th. Now if we check out this year, we'll see that we're going to have a penumbral eclipse on March 25th. And then we have a partial lunar eclipse on September 18th, followed by an almost lunar eclipse on October 7th. So it almost touches the shadow, it just barely doesn't graze it. So let's kind of have that asterisk there. But yeah, it's kind of cool because it happens the next month. So it's almost like a blue moon version of lunar eclipses. It happens right after itself. So very rare. So, but yeah, it almost hits it.
So if we touch base real quick with solar eclipses while we have our lunar calendar present, we'll just go over the dates, and if you really want to learn more, I'm going to have a future video about eclipses in a bit. But yeah, if we look at last year's lunar calendar, we see that on April 20th, there was a total solar eclipse, and then we had on October 14th was an annular eclipse. Annular means the moon was a little farther than normal, so it doesn't cover up the sun completely. And there's also partial, where it partially hits it, and then hybrid is a mix. And then now if we look at this year's, we have one coming up on April 8th. That's going to be a total solar eclipse. And then we're also going to have one on October 2nd. That's going to be an annular one. Now on to harvest moons. Harvest moons are the full moons that occur closest to the autumnal equinox, which is September 22nd, just like we talked about. These moons rise soon after sunset, providing abundant moonlight during the harvest season. The name harvest moon originates from the extra light it offers, aiding farmers in harvesting their crops. The one last year was on September 29th, a little while ago, and then this year is going to be on September 17th. Now on to hunter's moons. Hunter's moons are the full moons following the harvest moon. They are called so because they traditionally provide additional moonlight for hunters to pursue game even after sunset, and for the most part this is only for humans. The full moon may influence some aspects of animal behavior. It is just one of many factors that shape the complex interactions between predator and prey. Other factors, such as the availability of food, mating cycles, in other words, weather conditions, the seasons, and the presence of competitors also play significant roles. In the end, full moons do not invoke predatory instincts in animals. Not only was this a time used by people for hunting, but also for slaughtering and preserving meats. And just recently we had a hunter's moon, which was on October 28th. Now this year's is going to be on October 18th. Another thing to note about this is that every 3 years, the harvest moon and the hunter's moon are the same. Mainly because the hunter's moon is defined as it's in October, and harvest is the one closest to the autumnal equinox. Sometimes it's the same. Here's the meats. And now on to supermoons. Supermoons are full moons that coincide with the moon's closest approach to the Earth in cylindrical orbit, known as perigee. As a result, they appear larger and brighter than usual. Supermoons can occur a few times a year and offer a mesmerizing sight in the night sky. Last year we had 2 supermoons that resulted in our super blue moon, which we'll talk about in the next section. Yeah, we had a supermoon on August 1st and another supermoon on August 30th. This year we're going to have 2 supermoons around that time too. However, it's going to be on September 18th and October 17th. So now let's define what perigee is a little bit better. And while we're at it, we're going to define what apogee is. Perigee is, according to NASA, going to be 226,000 miles, which is 363,300 kilometers. And on the other hand, apogee is going to be 251,000 miles and 405,500 kilometers. So the moon isn't always at these distances when it's a full moon or new moon. It's kind of hit or miss a little bit. So, of course, they're not going to hit these on the dot. So how we define perigee and apogee is that they have to be within 90% of those distances in the end. So 90% of the farthest distance and 90% of the closest distance in order to be still considered that. So that's why we're able to have super blue moons in the end, where it's a super moon right after a super moon. Now, the moon's proximity to Earth during perigee can have an influence on Earth's tides. The gravitational pull of the moon, along with that of the sun, contributes to the rise and fall of the ocean's tides. During perigee, the moon's gravitational pull is slightly stronger, leading to a higher than average tides known as perigean tides or perigean spring tides. This can result in raising the tides by 2 inches. This has been apparent during the super blue moon on August 30th, which was when Hurricane Idalia hit Florida and the East Coast. It actually increased the intensity of the storm during the night. However, when it came the morning, it actually settled things down pretty good. If 2 inches were risen, well then that water must have been displaced somewhere. So when the moon, or aka the night, passed over, during the day, the tides were settled, per se. So now that we've paved the road with supermoon, let's talk about super blue moon. So obviously it's just the combination of blue moon and super moon. So it's just a super moon that happens 2 times in a row in 1 month. Like it's just a month for this one. So our last one was August 30th. So there's a super moon on August 1st and then August 30th. And then the next super blue moons will occur in a pair, actually, in January and March in 2037. So a while from now. So, but it'll pair it up like that just because there's February in the middle. Now, if we analyze this diagram, but from a super blue moon perspective, we're gonna see that there's gonna be 2 super moons in a row. However, they're not gonna be in the same spot just because the orbiting period and the lunar phase period are off. So the periods are off, so it's not going to be in the same spot. And that's all due to the fact that a supermoon is going to be a full moon. So it's going to be a full moon right here, and then next time it's going to be a full moon, it's going to be in a different spot. So in doing our analysis, we are going to have 29.5 days as our lunar phase period, and then we're going to see how many degrees that comes up with in the end. So for every period of rotation, you're going to have 27.3 days. So we're going to be able to cancel days in the end. And then we're going to have for every 1 period, we're going to have 360 degrees. 1 full rotation. Then periods cancel. And then we multiply everything out, we're going to have 389.01 degrees. And that's going to be equivalent to 1 rotation. And 29.01 degrees. So it's going to go past at about like 30 degrees. Now this is a rough estimate just because Kepler's law states that the area that it sweeps out is going to be a consistent number in the end. So pretty much it's going to be going faster over here and slower at apogee. However, for the most part, this is a pretty good estimate in the end. But yeah, it's not accurate. We'd have to use Kepler's law to be accurate at that, but it's a good estimate. And then one thing to note before I move on is that perigee is going to be 14% larger in the night sky and then 30% brighter in the night sky compared to apogee. So 40% larger of a moon compared to apogee. That's kind of cool. Now let's dive into micromoons. So just like we talked with perigee, it's just going to be apogee. So it's going to be the farthest distance. And this term is actually going to be used to describe both new moons and full moons. So a great example of this is going to be, just like I discussed earlier with the solar eclipses, the annular solar eclipse. So it's going to be basically not fully covering up the sun, but it's going to be covering up most of it, so it's just going to have this outer ring just like you can see right now. But yeah, that's a great example of a micromoon. It's covering up most of the moon, but it's missing some of it because it's further away. When it's in perigee, it covers up all of it, pretty much, just like so. But we're focusing on micro. So yeah, annular is going to be micro. Now, our last micromoon was on August 16th, which totally makes sense because that coincides with the super blue moon. It's going to be in the middle of all that. And now if we go on to this year's calendar, we can see that February 24th is going to be a micro full moon, and then March 25th is going to be a micro full moon as well. And then we're going to also have a micro new moon on October 2nd. And now we're going to discuss basically different new moons. We just discussed a bunch of different kinds of full moons. We're just going to discuss the new moons. These are as widely known and recognized, but might as well discuss them, I'd say. So the first one is going to be black moon. The term black moon is used to describe a rare phenomenon that occurs when there are 2 new moons within a calendar month. This is similar to a definition of a blue moon. Unlike the blue moon, the black moon is not visible since it is essentially an absence of moonlight. Now our next one is going to be on November 30th, 2024. So now we got next is super new moons. A super new moon occurs during perigee pretty much. So it's just like a super moon, however it's going to be a new moon version of it. This is going to cause it to be slightly larger and brighter. However, the difference in size and brightness may not be as noticeable as during a supermoon. Now, the next one we got is going to be on February 9th of 2024. And then we're also going to have one on March 10th right after that, and then April 8th. So there's going to be 3 supermoons right in a row. And then that makes sense because we're going to have micro full moons in between that on February 24th and March 25th, just like I discussed a little bit ago. So yeah, basically we're going to have 3 super new moons in that little area, which is kind of cool. And then to wrap it up, we got super black moon. So this is going to be the combination of black moon and super new moon. So it's basically the equivalent of super blue moon, but the new moon version of that. So it's going to be 2 consecutive perigees, in which it's going to be a new moon, 1 month as well, just like a blue moon is. And then our next one's going to be on August 31st of 2027, though. So a ways from now. And thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more videos just like this, and pretty much the full version of this astrology video that I've got for you coming, and it'll be coming real soon. So it'll have procession and everything cool like that. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and just watch more of my videos, of course.